In this episode, I'm with UFC champ Dominick Cruz, the GOAT of UFC Bantamweight Fighting.
If I'm the one who's going to say it's been too long, then the one who says it isn't been too long and has the personality to say it's not too long will get there.
Right.
So your personality will beat mine. It's not a choice in the end.
Right.
It's a fact. It's not a question of, well, I mean, my personality doesn't really fit that. Well, then I'm going to beat you.
Right.
It's just that simple. Because there's always somebody willing to do it because they're more passionate than you. And if they're more passionate than you, they're willing to go through more suffering than you. And if you're not willing to go through the suffering to the extent of this person, then why do you deserve it more than them? Mm-hmm. Losing doesn't need to be so cowardly. You can lose like a man too, and grow from it if you do. The key that I try to tell people is don't follow the masses.
Right.
When you follow the masses, you are everybody else. Now there's nothing that stands out.
Everyone wants to be great, but only few actually get there. And I'm on a mission to find out what all the greatest have in common. I've traveled tirelessly to find, sit down, and talk with GOATs, people that are arguably the greatest of all time at what they do. Sales, marketing, advertising, business, podcasts, branding, you name it. The way they do things may be different, but they all seem to see the world the same way. To them, success is not only achievable, but inevitable. And we'll get inside their heads as they share their expertise with me each week. My name's Mike Arce, and this is The GOAT Show. This episode is sponsored by Loud Rumor. If you own a fitness studio, cryotherapy, or massage business, there is no company in the industry better at generating high-quality leads than Loud Rumor. In just the last 2 years, Loud Rumor has worked with nearly 1,000 fitness and wellness companies and won ranking Arizona's Ad Agency of the Year in 2017. Getting more paying members in the door can be tough. Let Loud Rumor do the heavy lifting and get new people in your doors every day. Go to loudrumor.com and learn more. And I also have to share my experience with ClickFunnels. If you've been living under a rock and haven't heard of them, they're hands down the #1 platform for building landing pages and marketing funnels. I've been using them since 2015, and it's so crazy how easily my team and I create landing pages using their proven templates and easy drag and drop system. Without any design or coding experience whatsoever, we've been able to create hundreds of landing pages within minutes that look great and close sales better than anything we've used in the past. They're great for webinar funnels, sales funnels, demos, squeeze pages, you name it. I can't even imagine my business doing as well without them. And actually right now, they're offering a free 14-day trial if you go to clickfunnelspromo.com. So I definitely recommend you guys take advantage of that 14-day trial. It's free for 14 days, and you can get it at clickfunnelspromo.com. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Arce, and welcome back to another episode of The GOAT Show. Today, I'm here with UFC Bantamweight GOAT, Dominick Cruz. Dominick, welcome to The GOAT Show, man.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you guys. For everybody here that doesn't know, he's a 2-time UFC champion. He's a WEC fighting champion, and he has been recognized as one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in mixed martial arts. There's a reason I wanted you on this show, because a lot of the things that has made you great in sports are the same principles that can make people successful in business. And so we're going to go into those, into all those different points here that I've got. But first is, you're here in Phoenix now. You're from Tucson.
I am. I'm from Tucson. I didn't spend a ton of time out here in Phoenix growing up in Tucson, but I was in and out of here for grappling tournaments mostly. So I'd be doing like a wrestling tournament here or there, or a jiu-jitsu tournament after I graduated high school. But for the most part, if I was out here, I was just wrestling. Got it.
So the reason Dominick has been so, well, one of the reasons I would say you've been so successful is because you have an unorthodox style. And I think that's important because in order to develop a very unique style of fighting, which, I mean, just watching you fight, it's very different. You use different angles and cuts and the way you do stuff. It makes it so that, you know, have you ever heard of Tim Grover, Michael Jordan's personal trainer?
I've heard of him.
Yeah. So
I don't know him.
He's got an awesome book called Relentless, and one of the things he says in there is closers, which he says closers like the tier before the best tier. Closers will study the best, and cleaners, which is like the best ones, they make people study them. And when you have a new style like you have, that means that you probably studied some people, but I mean, you had to come up with your own stuff, which forces people to have to study you in order to prepare.
Right.
So tell me about your style. Like, when you went into this and you started like developing the style that you've got right now, I mean, what was the mindset? What were some things that were important to you when you were looking for your way of fighting?
When I first started fighting, weight classes were much different. It was around 2006 when I started. And I had just graduated high school. I was 18 years old. And the sport was just exploding. So it was just getting to the point to where it was an avenue that you might think about going. But at this point, it was still like human cockfighting. It was considered that.
Right.
It was still shunned down upon. It was still...
People didn't get it.
People didn't get it, and they weren't jumping on board to promote it.
Right.
And neither were TV networks. So you couldn't get Fox, you couldn't get any basic channels. You could only get pay-per-view or some kind of cable, like Versus at this time.
Right.
And so since there was only 155 pounds and up, I actually never got heavier than 160 soaking wet. So for me to be a 155-pound fighter, I understood, because I wrestled my whole life, that these guys were going to be cutting from 190 pounds to 155, and I don't get heavier than 160. So they were going to be, on fight night, usually between 25 and 30 pounds heavier than me. That being said...
And that makes a difference when you're wrestling.
Well, that makes a difference in a fight. I mean, you give 30 pounds to anybody, that's a huge problem.
Right.
I mean, no pun intended. So... you have to do something different when somebody's got that kind of weight on you, because if they grab a hold of you, the difference is in the strength. But I can make the difference up in speed, and you can change the range. So right off the bat, because I'm dealing with guys that are at least 6 foot tall, and way taller than me, way larger than me, I had to fight them different, because what I had realized is they were just able to reach me from so far away. And I realized that they were always attacking in one direction. So I said I just needed to attack the direction that the masses are going. And so if you're only attacking one way, it's because you got to think of it like, I like to break it down in the terms of a car. If you're doing a rally race, the car has to have good handling, right? If you're doing a drag race, the car's got a lot of power but can only go in a straight line.
Right.
So I was noticing everybody in fighting was a drag car. They were just going in straight lines, as hard, as powerful as possible. But I was like, you know what? That drag car will never win on a windy road. Right. Ever. I'll beat it 100% of the time. So that's the equivalent of footwork.
So your goal was to put people on this windy road.
Correct.
That their style of fighting just doesn't work.
Well, you can have all the power in the world, but if you're on a windy road, power does no good for you, because you can only get to the height of your power if you have time to do so. Right? So I'm constantly changing the timings so that it takes away their power. Right.
You know, and that's... Again, sports in general, sports and business, they are so parallel. And fighting to me is just like the most one for anything else. I use basketball a lot in my analogies, but fighting is so similar. And in business, what they say, the best marketers, they say when everyone zigs, you zag.
Yeah.
If everyone does this, if this is what everyone's doing, then you do this.
I try to explain that to people that I care about, what you just said. Because I try to, it's hard for me because I always, what you just said is true. Fighting to me can be broken down to any facet of life. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. I can come up with a scenario in fighting and translate it to any scenario in life. So what you just said is big to me, and it's that you have to zig and zag when the key that I try to tell people is don't follow the masses. Right. When you follow the masses, you are everybody else. Now there's nothing that stands out. For instance, look at all these sticky pads. I mean, the whole room is covered with sticky pad notes.
It's my to-do list. I'll have it done by 5.
So which one of these stands out to you right now?
Right.
I can't find one that stands out to me. They all just blend.
Right.
But you're going to find one that stands out eventually. And it'll be that one that's just standing out on its own. Nothing's around it. And you want to be that. You want to be the one that's standing out on its own. And everybody goes, what are you doing? Look at everybody else is doing it right. You're the only one doing it wrong. That's how you know you're doing it right.
Yeah, when everyone's thinking you're crazy.
Correct. And they're they're making fun of you and telling you, what are you doing? And it's because you're making them insecure that they're not doing something that they should be doing because they've never seen anybody do what you're doing.
Right. Yep.
So don't let them trick you, because they're just trying to bring you on their level.
And I don't even think they're trying. I think they just think you've got something wrong with you.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Yeah, I don't even think intentionally they're doing that. You know, another thing that I really like about it is failures. You know, in sports, the cool thing about sports as well is you can work at something for hours, not days and weeks and years, but just hours, and you can get something to be better than it was 2 hours ago. You know, like let's say you just wanted to improve the way you did this one particular kick. If you just did that kick over and over and over for 2 hours, it's a decent, noticeable change from 2 hours ago. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And that's just the law of repetition, which Tony Robbins calls like repetition the mother of mastery or something like that. It was similar, I think it was something like that, and repetition is the mother of mastery. But ultimately the idea is, okay, I got to expect two things at all times. One, that I have to do something over and over and over and over to really get great at it. How many times have you done the same kick or the same sprawl or punch?
Well, they said 10,000 times at the minimum, right? Isn't that the word?
Right, 10,000 at the minimum. And the other thing to expect, which took you 10 years to finally get it, but failure.
Yeah.
Right? So talk to me really quick, before we dive into failure actually, I want to dive into prior to the success. You were working at Lowe's doing customer service.
Well, I've had a lot of jobs, but
you had a lot of jobs.
That was one of them.
That was one of them.
Yeah.
How'd you go from there to pay-per-view?
I always explain this to people that, again, I care about. Like, I didn't start just successful. Nobody does, you know. So I had to like have all the crappy jobs to realize what I wanted to do. Without having a job at Lowe's Home Improvement, without having a job at Sherwin-Williams as a paint delivery driver, without being on the register at Whataburger, and my register always being off, and realizing I couldn't do math and I was an idiot and I couldn't even do a Whataburger drive-through, and then mixing the mortar for a bricklayer, and then doing outbound calls on outbound calls on telemarketing.
Right.
Name it, I've done it pretty much.
Yeah.
Janitor, selling memberships, everything. What I realized is having all these jobs made you find out that you hate everything.
You learned what you don't want to do.
Yeah, and that was the key to finding what I was willing to go through to be successful. So
Right.
I found my passion through misery.
Okay.
And I don't know, that might be a little different from a lot of people, but I had to go through I graduated at 18 like everybody else, and I didn't have money or scholarship to go to college, so I had to start the working road and pay for my own school.
Right.
In doing this, you start realizing all these jobs that you're just a youngin' with no work experience, that you just get the worst of everything.
Right.
Like, you got the worst bosses, and even though they're 60 years old and they've been at the job for 20 years as a, making burgers, they're
Right.
supposed to know more than you.
They still don't know what they're doing.
They still don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And you realize is that these people are your bosses that, like, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And then you leave that job and you go to a better one. And then you leave that job and you go to a better one. And as you keep working, you realize the more jobs you have working for other people, nobody cares about you other than yourself. So you end up having to work for yourself. And when you either figure that out or you don't, in my opinion. And working enough bad jobs, I realized that the only way you're going to do it is to be the boss and you don't of yourself per se. Start your own business in your own way somehow, your own platform, something. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know that when I started, but fighting became that. When I started fighting, it wasn't looked at as a job. It wasn't, when fighting started, it was just looked at as a prize fighter. It's like
Right.
some crazy guy who just does something on the weekends. It
Right.
wasn't seen as what it is now. So when I started it, it was just like, man, screw working for this idiot. I quit. I'm just going to go make more money than you made the entire year beating the brakes off somebody next weekend at a casino. I'm out. And then you leave, and you do it, and you make the money, and you win. And then you realize after you make that money, you only got one chunk. How do you fill in the gaps?
Right.
Now you just got one chunk of money, and you're like, crap, I got to go back and work for this idiot again because you got to make money.
Now, just like with fighting, would you say that that's kind of personality based? Do you think that just like sports and what I like, what I don't like, do you think what you do in that particular job, what you were brought in there to do, can make a difference in how much you like that that particular work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now it's not a job that you dislike. It's not a job that you're just doing for something else. You're doing it for you at that point. When somebody makes you special to them, like your right-hand man is to you, he knows you need him to an extent, for whatever that reason may be. But he's going to learn from that relationship.
Right.
When you're working at these jobs that I was working at, the boss doesn't care about you.
Right.
You know, they just don't care. They're just, you clock in, you clock out. And those are the jobs that you have to have before you realize that you got to find something that people care to have you around. Otherwise, you just have no love for yourself. You're going to a job every single day that you hate, that nobody appreciates you, nobody likes you. It just breaks you down. You don't even appreciate yourself after a while.
Right.
So that's what society does to people, I think. And then eventually you just become numb and you just give in.
Right.
Or I like to equate it to passion. I mean, what you're saying to me is there's a root issue. And it comes to passion, like business, fighting, you know, hunting, competitive eating, competitive weightlifting, entrepreneurship, running social media. It doesn't matter what it is. What you're doing here, I haven't found the passion for it the way you have. But you clearly have passion, otherwise you wouldn't wrote all this nonsense on the walls. Nobody would do this without passion.
Right, right.
Period. It's too much work. It's too much. You got 3 cameras here, you got people working for you, making sure everything's perfect. There's passion in your art here. That's what me and you have in common that's made us successful in our own avenues. People, if they can gain one thing from a successful human being, I would say it comes down to look at what their passion is. Whatever that successful human being is to you, look at what their passion is. And you'll find out that the only thing that makes a successful person different from an unsuccessful person is the fact that the successful person has found whatever they're willing to walk through coals for. They'll die for it. They'll give their left leg. I knew at one point in my life that I would give anything on earth. I would walk through coals, burn the bottom of my feet, and have to fix them to become a world champion, because in my mind at that point when I was thinking that way, that was the only way I knew to be successful. And if I didn't want to be working for people anymore, this was the one thing I had to accomplish, become a world champion. Dom, once you become a world champion, everything will be okay. I was wrong. I didn't know that was just the beginning of the problems, but that was a step, that was a goal. And I knew that I was so passionate about it. There was absolutely, I knew for a fact, nothing you could put in front of me that I wouldn't go around, walk through, go over to make that a reality.
I want to hear about the first fight that you got paid money, where it was like, I can breathe now. You know, like, because you know that fight, whatever that fight was, not the fight that you made a few $100. I'm talking about the fight where you really made money. When did that happen? What was that opportunity like when you first got it?
My last fight.
Yeah?
Took me to 23 fights before I made that paycheck.
Really? Was that not discouraging, but was that frustrating? Did it seem like it was taking too long?
Of course.
Yeah?
Yeah. But that's the way it is. That's why you have to have passion.
Yep.
I'm telling you, like, it didn't matter. I was already in. I'd already made my choice. I'd already, like, that's it. This is it. So if I'm the one who's gonna say it's been too long, then the one who says it isn't been too long and has the personality to say it's not too long will get there.
Right.
So your personality will beat mine.
Right.
It's not a choice in the end.
Right.
It's a fact. It's like you have to do it or you don't.
Right.
It's not a question of, well, I mean, my personality doesn't really fit that. Well, then I'm going to beat you.
Right.
It's just that simple. Because there's always somebody willing to do it because they're more passionate than you. And if they're more passionate than you, they're willing to go through more suffering than you. And if you're not willing to go through the suffering to the extent of this person, then why do you deserve it more than them? I'm willing to suffer more than you. I've earned it. Right. If it gets too hard for you and you're like, this is too much, it's ridiculous, don't you agree? Yes, I agree, it is. It's really dumb. So, this is life. Do you want it or not? This is what it takes. That's the pain you got to go through.
Right.
Do you want it? Do you want to blow your knees out 3 times to be a world champion again? No, I don't want to do this. But how bad do you want it? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've asked myself that question. I know you hear that a lot from people, but it's such a
But it's an important reminder.
It's so simple to me.
Right.
And it's hard for people to understand that because there's just no give to it.
Well, you said 23 fights. How many years is that?
Oh, I've been fighting since 2006, so it's been 11 years.
So it took you 11 years
to make the paycheck to where I can finally say, like, okay, it was like, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God I got this one.
Isn't that crazy?
It was crazy. It was humbling. Mm-hmm. It's been a humbling road. I mean, I went undefeated for 10 years. I won 4 world titles in the WEC. I was the first ever UFC Bantamweight Champion. I defended that twice, or 3 times, lost it, earned it back, defended it twice again, and then I'm able to get paid. Mm-hmm. So what you realize is, through that process, it's not just about the titles, and that's what I didn't know. Right. It's actually, that has very little to do with it. It's 100% how you build your brand.
You know what the crazy thing is too? Eliminating your super fans, right? Because you've got super fans, people that know every stat about you, every fact about you. Eliminating super fans and just talking about the average people, the people that have heard of you, they maybe watched a few things, but that's where it is, right? Mm-hmm. Those people there, they think your journey started the first time they heard about you. Yeah, yeah. It's almost like they didn't even know about the first 10 or 11 years when you were blowing out your knee, not making money, underground stuff.
Of course not.
You know, and so I think that messes with people too, because a lot of people, their impatience, I think, is trained by, it shouldn't take this long. Because they think that whatever, like from the moment I saw you to the moment you became a champion is like how long it takes.
Yeah. What's interesting about me is my career really started in the WEC, which was owned by the UFC, but nobody knew it because our weight classes didn't exist. Okay. So for a better part of my career, I was in an organization that nobody knew was the UFC, and the only question you get is, when are you going to fight in the UFC? Mm-hmm. How do you explain that to people? Yeah. You can't. So then basically what happens is none of your fights matter until you get to the UFC for any mixed martial artist, just so everybody knows. Unless you fight in the UFC, nobody cares what your record is. Nobody cares if you're a champion. Nobody cares if you're good. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's like saying you're a football player. Oh, you're in the NFL? What team do you play for? No, I'm not in the NFL. Then you're not a football player. Right. You're just playing games.
Well, every sport, NBA.
So that's the UFC is that, and that's they branded themselves great for that. So in the WEC, I'm winning titles, nobody cares, and that was a better part of my career than a lot of guys. And then I get to the UFC, and I win a couple more titles, and now my career actually started. So realistically, I've got like 4 or 5 fights in the UFC, if that, maybe even less than that. I don't even know. I just fight. And they've all been for titles for the most part, other than one fight. And still, nobody knows you except for those fights in the UFC. So your whole career, which is about 20 fights, is like non-existent to the world. And it's trippy. It's weird when you think about the road that I went through to get to the UFC, and it's all like nothing.
Right.
It makes you just really like just very focused on what's in front of you to know that it's very important to make every single step count. There's no messing up.
So I want to know about the day after you finally got the news. So they said, Dominick, we want you to fight in this fight, and we're going to pay you this. Okay? What's that next day look for you?
After you hear what you're going to get, the deal and everything. The next day, just get to work. It really doesn't change. The only thing that changes is you're willing to go into the fight under more dire circumstances, because now the fight will pay for the dire circumstances in the end. So that's the difference, is when you're getting paid the amount of money that you should be getting paid, in my opinion, as the level of athlete and the type of talent that I'm competing against, when you're getting paid that, you can now go into a fight under any condition at that point.
Like I'm fighting until I get my head knocked off because they're paying me to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes you want to go into a fight, but you know that if I go into this fight hurt, like I am right now, and then I don't win because I'm not 100% and I'm halfway, now I get half the paycheck and I got to pay for the injury.
And I got to pay my camp, which prolongs your next fight.
And I'm more hurt. So you got to really always add everything up at the prize at the end.
Right. This can last you for a while.
Because this is you're the car. So when you watch a rally racer, the car's hitting the sides, it's slamming on the brakes, it's revving, and then they send it into the pit, right? And they change the tires and they do all that. Well, I'm the car. Right. So you got to be careful how bad you want to rip that car to pieces and how much you're going to get at the end of each race, because you got to last to the end of the race. You can't just last through each lap.
Right, right.
And so you got to really look at the bigger picture of everything as a business owner, because I am the business. I only get one of these.
Right.
You know?
That's the same thing for business. You know, in business, when we didn't have any resources, or we felt like whatever move we make doesn't really have a payout because we didn't have the resources to get to there, you're very, very careful.
Yeah.
You play scrappy and you think about like you said, all the angles. Once you start making more money, once our business really started becoming very profitable, then it's like, let's take more chances.
Yes, exactly.
We can afford a loss.
And that's what I'd like to get into next, and that's where now you're really growing. That's what I can't explain enough. Okay, so you're making more money, right? All right. Now, because you're making that, you got to pay up. Now you got to pay the piper. Now paying the piper means trying something you never tried before. You might have to go in a little bit hurt and see if you're tough enough mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to handle that kind of issue. And at the end of that, if it goes your way, amazing, you just learned something new about yourself. If it doesn't,
you can afford the risk.
You can afford the risk if it doesn't. And you're going to learn something different because you just pushed the envelope just a little bit more than you've ever pushed before. It might not have gone your way, but that comes back to what I was saying. If you're passionate enough, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You're just going to get back up, dust yourself off, and you will keep going. It's a fact if you're passionate enough. If you're not, then you're going to stay on the ground and you're just going to say, I've had enough of this.
Right.
And that's just change your passion right then and there.
Right.
Figure out something else.
Now, the best fighters, the best athletes have losses that they should have won, or have losses that they should have lost because maybe they didn't train the way they used to, or just stuff happened, right? Another guy came in that was just as crazy and aggressive and committed. Someone's got to lose in a fight like that. So how do you handle something like that where, like, man, you put in all that time, I think you went 10 years without a loss, and then you finally lost one. What was the mentality like there? Because that was 10 years you didn't deal with that.
Well, you can go online and look at the post-fight interview. I did an interview on it and pretty much said everything that I could say after a loss for as long as I went without losing.
Can we actually pull that up?
I used this 8-10 weeks of camp and this challenge in front of the media and saying what you're going to say and backing it up and taking your loss and defeat and all this to grow as a human being. That's why we're here. We're not here just to be the best at everything. We're here to kind of be attached to everything but nothing at the same time. And it sucks to lose. It's the worst feeling in the world. But it doesn't make me, it's not what I survive off of, is being the title holder. I'm a very happy individual outside of that. And for that, I'm thankful. When I did that, it's hard for me to redo it because in the moment I knew I lost that day, and right away I accepted it, and I accepted it in that interview. And that was very important to me, is to just, because I can't explain to you how many times I've fought people, beaten them over 10 years, and every time I beat them, they're sitting at that table and they have nothing but excuses. Oh, I got hurt. Oh, you know, it's just nonsense. I was so tired of hearing people lose like cowards and not lose like men. All the people I beat for years and years always had an excuse. Never just said, well, he was just better than me at this, this, and this. Right. And I wanted to make a statement that losing doesn't need to be so cowardly. You can lose like a man too, and grow from it if you do. So it was hard, but there was an example to be made that was bigger than myself, and it's that, you know, there's a lot of kids. I used to grow up watching wrestling, and after a match, sometimes the kids would take their headgear off and chuck it into the stands, and then you get chewed out by the coach. You'd get kicked out of the tournament, and you weren't able to return. Well, I mean, I see a lot of fighters act that same way, and there's no punishment for it. But you're looking bad yourself. The key that I would say to losing is understanding that it's inevitable. It's inevitable, eventually.
But you kind of expect that. You've got that level head. I think the best business people, you know, and just in life, because in life, even if you're not a business person or an athlete, you're going to have losses in life. You're a human being. You're going to have wins and losses. But the thing is, you know, I think winners, they go into every fight, game, business meeting 100% convinced they're going to win. Yeah. But up until that day, they always knew in the back of their head, one day a loss is going to happen. That's going to happen. But I think some people, it's a yin or a yang. They either A, and this unsuccessful, right? Unsuccessful people, they either go into the fight, the game, or the business meeting thinking, I don't know if I got what it takes.
Yeah.
Or the opposite, the extreme opposite, where they go, I can't lose, and then they lose all of a sudden. And it's like they never even imagined this as a possibility. And I think when that happens, they handle it terribly.
Right, I agree. And it's because you weren't looking at just things that you weren't looking at every avenue, you know. I try to look at a loss before the loss and think, all right, before every opponent, I say, all right, what happens if you do lose to this person?
Right.
That's like one of the very first things I do. I say, all right, you're going to face this person. What happens if you lose? Is your life over? No. Are you going to die? Well, I mean, hopefully not, but yeah, possibly.
In your world,
yeah,
more likely than
mine. Possibly in my world,
yeah.
maybe, but I doubt it. There
Right.
hasn't been deaths yet. What else? Are you going to lose your sponsors? No. They'll
You'll be
good.
broke.
Am I going to be
You're
broke?
homeless.
No. So you just go through a list of the worst case scenario before you deal with the issue. All the worst case scenarios. What's everything bad that can happen? And if it does that, if it goes every worst case scenario, can you survive it? That's the question. Well, for me, absolutely. Every time.
And once you do that, you could put that behind you.
Well, you don't even have to put anything behind you. It's already dealt with, actually.
Right.
It's just done. And this is similar. I took this mentality from, like, if you read about samurais, they focus on death. They don't even focus on life. Life is inevitable. We're already living it. So if you focus on the root issue, which is what are we fearful of? We're fearful of the unknown and death. They focus and sit and bask in that and what the end would look like. And they're so comfortable in the end that they're not even worried about the end. They're just in the now. They can just be here. And I think that's key, is making sure that you can be in the now, making sure you're not worried about what other people are doing, but making sure they're adjusting to you because you already know worst case scenario. There's nothing to worry about.
Right. And now you can focus on, like, if you had all the worst case scenarios out, now you can get in the fight and go, okay, there's literally nothing here that can crumble me.
Right.
So now let's just win this shit.
Yes, and that's it. That's
Right.
100% my mentality.
Right.
Is if you're not going to literally kill me, I know I'll beat you because I'll keep getting up. That's the problem.
Right.
That people don't have enough in them for that. You'd be surprised how many times people will quit after they're beating you. They'll just quit. They'll just give it to you. I beat this dude up one time named Brian Bowles for my very first world title. We fought one round. I beat the crap out of him, and I knew I was breaking him. Second round, he comes out, and I'm breaking him worse. I'm kicking his leg till he can't walk. And I know that the issue is he can't walk. But he says that he broke his hand in the second round. I broke my hand in the second round too, and he literally just said, here, have the title. He just gave it to me. He didn't come out for the third round. He didn't answer. He sat on the stool, said, my hand hurts. And my hand was broken too, but my hand didn't hurt bad enough to go out there and fight him the third round. And I would have gone 5 rounds with a broken hand because I wanted the belt and I knew it. Right. That's an example of somebody who's willing to go just a little bit more regardless of the situation. And because of that, I won. Right. And realistically, he could have knocked me out in the next 2 rounds and won with a broken hand. And then what's he going to learn about himself? Yeah. He denied himself that avenue. He denied himself something there.
Right, because he's feeding that part of him.
Now he lost.
You're feeding the opposite part of you. There's actually.
And then what if I lose and get knocked out? I know I tried to beat him even though my hand was broken.
You faced it.
So it's like I'm not going to be mad at myself anymore.
Yeah. There's this great book called The One Thing, and there's this line in there that was incredible, and it said the guy was basically saying there's 2 wolves in your belly. Which one wins in a fight? And then it goes, the one that you feed the most.
Yes.
They're fear and faith. That's the name of the 2 wolves. Whichever one wins in a fight is the one you feed the most. And so the more you keep feeding fear, that guy fed fear that day. You know, so now his fear is taking over him more the next day, the next fight. You fed faith. So now because of that, the next time you realize, oh, wasn't that bad? I can do this. And every time your faith gets stronger as well.
Now that takes me to my next thing. You say, well, first of all, what's faith? You can't touch it. You can't grab it. How do you build faith?
You can't touch fear either.
Right.
They're both this thing.
But you can feel fear. You can't feel faith.
Oh, got it, yeah.
So you can't touch it. That's what I'm trying to say. Faith, you can't. Explain faith to me.
Believing that believing that what you want to be there is there. Believing if you're going to, I think I heard one person say.
How do you train faith?
By having faith. It's crazy. It has to feed itself.
Yeah, you can't explain it.
You have to feed itself. The only way to have faith is to literally practice it and then be right a few times.
How do you practice faith?
So, like you said, going into a fight, I got a broken hand, I'm going to go out there anyway because I believe that I can still win this.
What's the power you're using to have the faith to do that?
I believe that the power is the previous power that you gained in the last one. I think every time you use faith and it helps you or it works, that fuels the next one.
Correct. I agree. And I think that the other thing for that, for me personally, is a higher power. I have a higher power in God. That's mine.
Right.
And if you have, it doesn't have to be God. It could be this microphone. If this is my higher power, I can now relinquish some of my stresses to it. It doesn't matter. It's a higher power, something you believe that is the created everything.
You can put your trust in something.
You can put your trust in something. And when you have those things, you can now have trust and faith in something bigger than yourself and bigger than we are. And it's actually a very huge crutch. It's actually really nice. And to me, how can you exercise and learn faith if, to me, God is, or a higher power is the easiest way to train it. Because when you look at God, you can't touch him, you can't reach him, you can't do anything with him. We just assume that he exists, right? That's training faith because we don't know that he's there, but sometimes if people who believe in this higher power, believe in God or believe in the Holy Spirit or believe in all these things, they believe they feel it sometimes, and that's just faith. And that's their own feeling. It doesn't mean they're wrong, it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't, it's just what they are. And they can do crazy things because of that. That's just their own way. Some people might not believe in any higher power. So the question is, how do you train faith? That's my answer is find something bigger than yourself and see if you can relinquish some of your stresses onto it. And if you can't, then I don't know what to tell you because you got a lot of stress you're going to be carrying alone.
Or if it's bigger than yourself, it could do more than you.
Right, and that's the key for me is just making everything bigger than me. Everything I've done to make my own success has been a focus that wasn't about making my own success. It's been about making other people successful by living my life. So then, if I'm focused on people bigger than me, like having an influence in mixed martial arts, explaining to the world what's going on in mixed martial arts, in a way, I'm explaining to the whole world what all these fighters are doing and explaining their artistic values to the world, right? That's bigger than me. I'm not just saying I'm better than this fighter because I do this, this, and this, and he only does this, this, and this. No, I'm saying what he does, and I'm saying for him. That's big. I'm an expert in the sport.
About him that maybe he's not seeing in himself.
Maybe
and you're giving him that help.
And I'm giving that to everybody in the world who hasn't seen.
Right.
And I'm an expert in it because I've been in it so long. So I feel it's my something that I can do that can help. And in that mindset, I said, Dom, I don't like for instance, I had people calling my fights color commentary for years, and I hated the way they called them. Like you said, I fight different. I fight unorthodox. I have different style. I can't tell you how many years people have called my fights and said, man, this guy fights so weird. He's herky-jerky. He does this weird. They just don't know what I'm doing, so they make up words and say it's weird.
Right.
And it's like, screw you, man. Why don't you do some research, watch some film, and see that I've done this in the past 5 fights. It's not just a fluke.
Well, now
that pissed me off.
Is that why you became an analyst?
Yes.
And then actually not just an analyst, but 2-time analyst of the year.
I think it is.
You felt like you looked at it a little differently.
I think that I didn't look at it differently. I think that they didn't look at it at all.
That makes sense.
And I think that they didn't care.
Yeah.
And I believe that with all my heart. And I know it because I work with them.
Right.
And I put the work in, and so it's made me 2-time analyst of the year because I care about something bigger than my face on the TV saying what the fighter's doing when I watch it. I know that this fighter has one platform, one time to do it. And if I don't know what they're doing before they get in there, I'm not helping them.
Right.
I'm just helping myself.
Right.
Because I'm sitting there and I'm on TV and my opinion counts, but then I didn't do the studying to make my opinion actually count.
You didn't prepare.
I didn't prepare. I just said that I knew what I was doing because I'm me. And it's like, what are you? And that's not bigger than yourself. And now you're hurting that individual because you're not explaining their style. They get one chance to do this, and this is it.
Right.
My style never got explained right. It's just getting understood in the past 2-3 years.
Right.
They started getting it. And then I'm an analyst now. And so I'm interviewing these fighters. I'm getting all this stuff, and it's made a huge difference because when you're looking at it from a standpoint that you understand what's going on, you're not missing things, and you're not just saying, oh yeah, that looks this way, but you actually know what's going on, you know?
And it's actually appreciated by the fighters and their camps.
Right, and I think that that's been seen, and that's why I was able to get Analyst of the Year, is because I'm watching these guys fight before they fight, and then I'm explaining what they're gonna do before they do it, because I've watched the film. Nobody's ever watched any of my film and understood what I was doing except recently, in the past like couple of years.
Right, that's cool. Okay, so now let's dive in. Last thing here before we wrap up. 2-time Analyst of the Year, but you also you're starting to really get into the business game too, and you're starting to look at stuff like that. So what does your life look like in the next 15, like let's say 15 years from today? We're 2018.
Holy
I don't know
cow.
why I had to look at my watch to know it was 2018,
I know, right?
but it's 2018. What does 15 years from today look like in your world?
Honestly, I was saying to you at the beginning of this interview, I'm in a weird place, and I think viewers could probably accept this, that I don't know. Like, I'm similar to probably viewers to an extent that are watching this saying, oh, Dom has this passion and he figured this out, lucky Dom. But it's like, this is what's interesting to me, is I'm coming to a new road where it's like, now it's time to regrow another one too. You don't just stop after one. Once you reach the peak, then what? Right. And you gotta, how do I branch out from here? Business was the way right now, and that's why you said I'm trying to figure out that portion more and just get better at it to be of more use to more people from the things that I've gone through. But 15 years from now, man, like, I'm trying to rebuild myself right now and figure that out. I don't know, it's hard.
Well, I'll tell you right now, some people that I've met in just the entrepreneur world, the people that I've gotten to interview, the GOATs, right? One thing that they all either have, or even what they are, is they're high performance coaches, or they have high performance coaches. Somebody that, you know, even the best, even a Michael Jordan, even a Tom Brady, they've got a guy that they can call that just kind of feeds them the language that they like to hear, that gets them to think. One thing I will say about you.
I like that you said that, though, because I try to explain I just want to say that to everybody listening. Like, the way he just said is so important to me. More than anything probably we've talked about is what you just said. And
feeding the language?
Not just that, no, having a coach.
Oh yeah, having a coach.
Period.
Yeah.
See, like, I think people make a huge mistake in life, and they don't have a coach for life. It's like, life is so freaking hard. It's one of the most painful things we do. I'll be honest, life is way harder than any fight I've ever had in my whole life. Fighting's easy. I show up in the morning, I train, I go home, I eat, sleep, hydrate, come back, train again, and there's no lying and there's no bullshit anything. If I get beat up, it's my fault. If I beat somebody up, it's my fault. That's it. It's cut and dry, it's simple. There's no problems. When I wake up for life, I could have a flat tire. Fix the flat tire, get to work, my radiator explodes. After the radiator explodes, I walk inside, stub my toe.
You didn't even choose to fight, and you're getting beat up.
Yeah.
Right?
You know?
At least in the professional world, you at least choose to get in the ring and get beat up. But in life, you get beat up in the middle of the night.
Right. And so how come we don't have coaches for that? And to me, I do. I have somebody that like what you just said, you put all this weight on, all this stuff. When I go to fighting and I have a problem in fighting, I'm not getting this double leg, and I don't know why. I always have somebody to fix it, 100% of the time, in all athletics. Why don't we have that in life? Why is life not seen as an athletic event at all? To me, that's key, and that's something I have in life. I have pillars in my life that when life's kicking my ass, I can talk to them and figure out ways to adjust. And if you don't have those people around you, you're relying on yourself all the time. That's me going into a UFC title fight with no cornermen, no teammates, no coaches, and I'm just going to prepare myself for a 5-round title fight. How well do you think I'm going to do?
Right.
I mean, I might do it.
Right.
But like, nobody to put water on my neck, nobody give me coaches in between coaching in between rounds. Like, let's look at this from a real standpoint. How come we can't do that with life? Why don't we? Well, it's pride and ego. Because we say, oh, I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need this. I mean, I got my life figured out.
Yeah.
I make this much money a year. I got a nice car. I got a wife. I know more than those guys. And it just hurts our feelings to say that we need help.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of things, but they help. You don't need to eat healthy. but it helps.
Yeah.
You don't need to exercise, but it helps. You don't need to read, but it helps. And the goal is to get everything you possibly can to help yourself get better. I'll tell you right now, just the way this is actually the first like real conversation, like, you know, that lasted, I think, more than 10, 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, he doesn't do any real conversation unless it's on camera for him to get something from it.
No. Actually, I forgot like the last 10 minutes that we were even still in the show. Like, we're probably way over.
But what I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, what I will say, man, to tell you the truth, you have a mentality that I think could really help people in that coaching world. I think that's something that you're wired to do, whether you choose to do it or not. Because here's the thing, there's people that are successful, and there's people that maybe have the right mentality, the way they look at things, but they don't know how to get other people to look or think of that. You know, like my dad's a smart guy. He would have, if I was homeschooled by him, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
My dad just doesn't have the patience for me.
Okay.
He doesn't know how to, he won't be able to teach well. He's not a teacher.
I see what you're saying.
But he's successful. He did well. You know, like he was an immigrant, moved here, built his business, but not a good teacher.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people out there that are successful, probably made a name for themselves, but I don't think they know how to get somebody out of a rut or get them motivated or get them to see things a certain way. And I think that's something you have a real talent for. You look at things a little deeper, and I think that could be a good thing for you.
I just try not to look at it as something as me thing, and look at it more of a broad-based thing. That I might be good at that. You're right, but everybody's got their own thing. And I always go back to fighting. I can take every facet of life and translate it to fighting. I can't tell you how many fighters I know that hop around and find camps. Every single fight, they leave the camp, go to a different one, go to a different one. They lose, they'll switch camps. They win, they'll stay. And they're always...
That's people with jobs.
Right. And they're always hopping around, though. And the reason they're hopping around is they don't have the faith, they don't believe. You will never push yourself as much as somebody else can help you and push you.
Right.
And if you're not willing to go search for those type of people to put into your life, then to me, you're not trying to improve. You're not trying to evolve. You're happy where you're at, and you already know everything. So how are you going to grow?
You're not.
That's my opinion.
That's awesome, man. Well, listen, I've had a great time having you on the show. This actually was a better episode. I thought it was going to be a good episode for sure, because I know always knew there were parallels, but I like the way you think, and I like your whole mentality of it. It's clear as to why you've been able to win comeback of the year, comeback fight of the year, go 10 years straight, be able to overcome a lot of what you did. Your mentality is exactly where it needs to be for a champion. That's why you are.
Let's hope so, because I'm not done yet. So let's hope we just keep going. Man. You know, I'm not perfect. I haven't done it all yet. I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
So let's just hope I can keep it going, man.
Yeah. Well, a champion mindset you got, and so you will. So for everyone watching, for everyone listening, we just spent time with the GOAT. Thanks so much for coming on, my man.
Mr. Arce.
For everybody else, we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts might be. And if you really like this episode, please leave a review for us on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.